see trees of green, red roses too. I see them bloom.
Welcome to Childhood Cancer Talk Radio, powered by Jack's Angels, where we talk about your experiences, advocacy news, research, and today's heroes for kids. We are here to bring hope to the unthinkable but real experience of a child diagnosed with cancer. Jack's Angels' advocacy mission is to provide a voice for children with cancer to effect change for a more hopeful future for those to come. Childhood Cancer Talk Radio starts right now. Here is your host, Janet Demeter.
Good afternoon. This is Childhood Cancer Talk Radio, and I'm Janet Demeter, your host for a great show today about hope, science, two of our heroes for kids, and the amazing ingenuity that went into the creation of CC-TDI, the Children's Cancer Therapy Development Institute, currently in Portland, Oregon, in its second year of operation. Our special guests today are Jonathan Agin, General Counsel and Institutional Official for CC-TDI, and Dr. Charles Keller, Scientific Director, from whom we'll be hearing after the break. What struck me when I first heard about CC-TDI are a couple of things. Number one, it's a nonprofit biotech company dedicated to eradicating childhood cancer. And number two, its operation is literally a proactive solution to one of the biggest problems in turning research into viable therapies for children. And then most importantly, this company has managed to bring two therapies for kids to the FDA after their first year, which is, I think, as much as has been done for kids' cancer therapies in the last 30 years. And I will stand to be corrected possibly later, but I know there have been very few drugs developed for children. Why is this important? We are on the air because of the need to raise awareness of the general public to the realities experienced by those affected by childhood cancer. Cancer is the leading cause of death in children in the United States after accidents and injuries, yet only 4% of our National Cancer Institute budget for research targets pediatric cancers as a whole. Okay, here I go again. Friends, what does your phone do at 8%? Does it warn of a shutdown? Mine is dead before I ever see 4%. Any way you look at that number, and if you can imagine, I've heard long and windy arguments in the attempt to prove that 4% is generous. It's evident that children's cancer is not high on the priority list for research with our government. How does this translate? If, God forbid, your child were diagnosed with the most malignant brain tumor, for example, when you ask why there are no solutions for your child, you discover it's because the numbers aren't great enough for investors. Even with the moonshot of the vice president, which gives so much hope, the briefings posted in the press about it and through the White House list childhood and very rare cancers, I quote, at the very end as an afterthought. It seems as if our children are still going to come last. I truly hope I'm wrong about this, and I hope to bring some of our representatives most concerned with childhood cancer to come on the show to give their firsthand input on the subject in the future. But our guest today, Jonathan Agin, may indeed have some very helpful insight on the subject. Jonathan is a former civil defense trial lawyer from Washington, D.C. originally, and has become one of the United States' foremost advocates for children with cancer following the death of his daughter, Alexis, to DIPG in January of 2011. He is the editor to the Childhood Cancer Awareness Advocacy section of the Cancer Knowledge Network and is a frequent contributor to the Huffington Post. His testifying before Congress on issues of identity theft impacting the childhood cancer community resulted in H.R. 2720, the Alexis Agin Identity Theft Protection Act. He is an original founding steering council member of the DIPG Collaborative. This is a dynamic group of foundations funding the most significant research for DIPG, a pediatric brain cancer responsible for most of the brain tumor deaths in children each year, and historically, obviously, underfunded for research. He frequently interacts with members of Congress, the White House, and as well as certain regulatory agencies. You can visit his advocacy website for clear, accurate, and up-to-date information at jonathanagin.com, and follow him on Twitter at Jonathan Agin. He's a father of four and in his spare time competes in endurance athletic events. Jonathan, you're amazing. We are so glad to have you with us today on the show. How are you?
I'm okay. I appreciate being on and appreciate all you do to bring awareness and bring this issue of childhood cancer and what needs to be done right to the forefront.
Well, it's just what our kids do, right? When they're a certain age, they do those things that they can. So that's all I'm doing.
Yeah, no, absolutely. What I hear all the time is, I don't know whether I could do it or I couldn't do it, referring to what happens when your child is diagnosed with cancer or when parents become advocates. And neither one of us had a choice. We had to do it. Our children didn't have a choice either. They were diagnosed. And so you do what you have to do. And for me, the road to where I'm at right now was long and painful and trying and has involved a tremendous amount of work to get to this place and this point. But for me, there's no other choice.
Yeah. I hear that. I understand. Describe for me a little bit what was the train of events that created this path for you? I know it began with your daughter, and could you tell us a little bit about her?
Sure, yeah. So Alexis was born on January 31st, 2006. No difference in her birth or her health history up until the time of her diagnosis. She was diagnosed at 27 months of age. There were some things that were going on that, in retrospect, now make sense, but neurologically she was intact. What had happened is the week before her diagnosis, several people, and myself included, had noticed that her right eye was inverting just intermittently. And so she was taken to the pediatrician for just a regular checkup. We had taken her to a pediatric gastroenterologist. She was diagnosed with acid reflux, put on Prevacid, and that was that. So fast forward to April 10th, 2008, and the pediatrician said, why don't you just take her in for a CT scan? I doubt there's anything wrong with her. It's probably just lazy eye or strabismus, and just rule anything out. And I was actually in a deposition about 2.5 hours outside of the area, and my wife had taken Alexis to the hospital, done the CT scan, and I got a frantic call that they had found a mass on her brain. Get up here as fast as I could. So I frantically drove up here, and what happened is after that, a neurosurgeon pulled up the scan and wrote down on a business card that he had 2 words, pontine glioma. And he said, do me a favor, don't look these words up. We had an MRI the next day. Well, the first thing that we did is look the words up, and
of course,
you see exactly what you're facing at that point, but you still don't really know. And so the next day, the 11th, she had an MRI, and it confirmed that she had a pontine glioma. We didn't hear the words DIPG at that time. The first thing I thought was, okay, she's got a brain tumor. Let's go to the top people and let's get it out. Well, we quickly learned that you can't get DIPG out of your child's head because it's not a solid mass. It's a diffuse lesion. And so from that day, April 11, 2008, until January 14th, 2011, Alexis battled. She survived for 33 months. During that course, she really had a very, very unimpacted life up until towards the end. She was on 5 different clinical trials. She was treated at Inova Fairfax Hospital in Northern Virginia. She was treated at Children's National Medical Center. She was treated at NIH, CHOP, and Sloan Kettering. We tried to uncover every single stone, and she was amazing. She's my inspiration and the reason why I do everything that I do. So
I understand. She was so young. She was very young. My son was young too.
Yeah, no, I know that. I've seen a good handful of kids that are diagnosed at that age, and that was one of the things that initially upon her diagnosis that we were told was a positive, was her young age. There was just a paper that had come out from St. Jude's saying that children that were less than 3, closer to 2, that were diagnosed with the IPG fared better. They didn't know why, but that was one of the things that we were told upon her diagnosis, was that, in fact, because she was so young at diagnosis, she had a better chance. So, but she's now, we just marked her 5th year since her death, and she's been gone longer than she was here. So, it's
I'm so sorry.
Slap in the face, but you know, I just posted a piece in Huffington Post talking about my journey to where I'm at right now, and the piece talked about how Alexis's journey with childhood cancer and her death have provided me with a gift, and it's the gift of perspective in my life and understanding what's important and focusing on what's important and creating the opportunity for me to step back and assess where I'm at and what I'm doing and what's important to me. And that took a long time, frankly, from the time that I tried to get back into practicing law. I was fortunate enough, I had started my own law firm with 2 partners, and when I came back in February or March of 2011, one of my partners had left, and there were many days where I just sat staring blankly at my computer screen, and I just never found the passion back for the practice, which I actually enjoyed before she was diagnosed.
Wow.
From that point forward, it was a quest, a singular, relentless quest to be able to professionally make something happen for myself in the childhood cancer world, and a number of ventures that I tried that didn't obtain funding, and then I just had the right opportunities, thankfully, and here I am.
Well, Jonathan, we're going to hear more about this when you come back. This is Childhood Cancer Talk Radio, where kids come first for the cure. You're listening to Jonathan Agin, writer for the Huffington Post and co-founder of CC-TDI.
Stay tuned. Janet will be right back with more on Childhood Cancer Talk Radio, where kids come first for the cure.
If you're ready for a big change in your work, your career, your happiness, your life, it's time for the $1 Million Mindset with Marla Tabaka. Monday afternoons at 2, 1 Central on TogiNet.com. Marla believes that with the right mindset, anything is possible. Join us as successful life coach Marla Tabaka inspires you and her clients to explore, discover, and live your dreams by developing what she calls the $1 Million Mindset. Marla will inspire you to take action on your dreams and reveal secrets to success that will help you realize your own unique power. Tune into the $1 Million Mindset for heartwarming stories with Marla Tabaka. Learn tips and tricks to building a successful business and unlock the secrets to creating a happier, more balanced life through abundant thinking and attraction power. For more information on the $1 Million Mindset, go to our website, marlatabaka.com. That's MarlaTabaka.com. It's the $1 Million Mindset with Marla Tabaka. Monday afternoons at 2, 1 p.m. Central on TogiNet.com. Homeschooling? Have questions? Get your pen and paper ready. It's the sociable homeschooler, Vivian McNinney. Fridays at 5, 4 Central on TogiNet.com. After a handsome blue-eyed Texan fell in love with Vivian at the Victoria Station in London, she found herself at DFW Airport with a tiny suitcase and a snazzy little duffel bag. Well, 25 years later, she is now happily married to that blue-eyed cowboy. They have 4 grown children ages 24 to 18 who became willing guinea pigs when she unwittingly stumbled upon the world of homeschooling. Wildflower Academy flourished for 15 years. They survived and thrived, and you can too. Vivian will be covering a wide range of issues that face homeschoolers. What do you do with kids in the summer? How to set up your one-room schoolhouse? How obedience is paramount? And what to do with those snakes? Plus, you'll be sharing ideas and insights that she gleaned from other homeschoolers. So join us for an engaging hour with the sociable homeschooler, Vivian McNinney. Friday afternoons at 5, 4 Central on TogiNet.com.
Welcome back to more great conversation on Childhood Cancer Talk Radio, because every child's life deserves hope. Here's Janet.
Welcome back to Childhood Cancer Talk Radio on TogiNet.com. I'm Janet Demeter, your host, and today we're talking about Children's Cancer Therapy Development Institute, which is dedicated to making every childhood cancer survivable, regardless of diagnosis. It's a nonprofit biotech company formed with the aim of bridging the preclinical gap between basic research and the initiation of clinical trials for children. CC-TDI can be found on the web at www.cc-tdi.org. We've been talking with Jonathan Agin, advocate for children with cancer and co-founder of the Institute. And before the break, Jonathan and I were talking about, he was explaining to me the story, what he went through with his daughter, Alexis, who was diagnosed with DIPG, one of the worst brain tumors a child can possibly have, and how it ended up kind of turning his life around and even completely changing his vocation insofar as profession. There are huge changes, of course, when your child is diagnosed, and the whole process, when unfortunately some of them die, it's very real and it's survivable. We do it somehow. Jonathan was mentioning how some people say, "I don't know how you do it," but anyway, I'll leave the comments to you. I think we were talking about your job as an attorney and how you kind of lost your initial spark for doing that.
Yeah.
And didn't used to really like writing, but now you write more.
Yeah, so again, in terms of my practice, I was a civil trial lawyer defending insurance companies, and I actually enjoyed what I was doing. I enjoyed the business development aspect of it. I enjoyed being in the courtroom, and I actually was a pretty good lawyer as well at one point. I say that jokingly. I'm still hopefully a decent lawyer. But once Alexis was diagnosed, that all changed. And it just changed me in my core. And I wasn't a writer. I didn't enjoy writing. And I wrote one. We had a Caring Bridge page set up for Alexis, and I wrote one post, and that was that. I didn't want to write anymore. And then I wrote another one, and then I started writing more and more and more, and then I couldn't stop. And it became very cathartic, and I think people started to connect with my writing, and I found a voice, and it felt good. It felt like an outlet for everything that was going on. And then I came to write for the Huffington Post after learning that Alexis' Social Security number had been stolen and used to file fraudulent tax ID. Yeah, fraudulent tax return. And once that story broke, and we had been interviewed a number of times, and then Huffington Post had interviewed me and asked me if I wanted to submit a blog, and I said, sure, I did. And then they said, hey, write whenever you want, how often you want. And so I started writing there, and then for the CKN, which is a journal out of Canada. And it grew and grew, and the passion that had been ignited just singularly took over, and I feel as though I'm fighting Alexis's fight, and some people may see it as unhealthy in some respects, but this is
them.
and you know what, you throw whatever stone you want. Alexis taught me all I
there
need
you go.
to know. And every other child who I've ever met with cancer, there's something that's very unique and very deep about these kids. They're really old souls, and they
Absolutely.
And there's something inherently undescribable about them that just makes them just such incredible individuals to get to know. So, how could I not?
I agree. It's hard even now watching, other children go through the same thing. I fall in love with them and they pass, and that's why I do what I do. And I'm going to skip forward a little in time here.
Sure.
Because we also have today a partner of yours and co-founder of CC-TDI. He has just joined us. And this is Dr. Charles Keller, co-founder and scientific director of the Institute. Charles co-chairs the Brain Tumor Development Therapeutics Committee of the Children's Oncology Group and is a member of the Soft Tissue Sarcoma Committee of Children's Oncology Group and recently completed a 5-year rotation as a standing member of the National Cancer Institute NCI-1 study section. With over 80 scientific publications authored and as a recognized expert in the preclinical investigation of childhood cancers, Charles's expertise and passion for helping kids has not only brought the Institute to life, but to prolific status in just the first 2 years. Dr. Keller, welcome to the show. Are you there?
Oh, well, thank you, Janet. Thank you very much for what you do here through the radio show and also for letting us be part of it today.
Oh, well, what you do is amazing. I hope that it's truly a trend that you're starting and others catch on because it's incredible.
Oh, well, thanks very much. It's always great to do great science and great publications that lead to grants, but when we put the accountability to families in the picture, then we end up doing things that we're just really proud of.
Absolutely. Your heart for children and your expertise in science is something that I think is really remarkable about you. And I wonder if you could tell us a little bit about the comment from your daughter when she was 4 years old that inspired you to do what you do now.
Oh. Wow. Well, yeah. So I have 2 daughters that I love dearly, Greta and Addie, and they're 9 and 11 now. But there was a time, and this was with the COG study, we were organizing 13 different institutions to do basically a Pillsbury bake-off of everybody's best idea for a drug. And then bring it to a clinical trial, and that's resulted in the panabinostat trial that is opening in the Pediatric Brain Tumor Consortium here shortly. But to fund that, we had to get a great deal of funding, $660,000 in total. $100,000 of that came from grants from the Cure Starts Now consortium, but probably $500,000 of it came from the Lila Nasuli Foundation. And it was often, truly, it was often in the form of a 3-minute phone call because we knew each other, we'd met. There was a lot of rapport, and so I followed how their daughter Lila was doing. She was right there in the thick of things as they were creating this foundation, and so I would talk about Lila at home. My daughter would say, "Hey, I have an idea. Why don't we go to the lab on Saturday? We'll come up with a treatment. We'll test it on other kids, and then if it's safe, we'll give it to Lila." So, she kind of had the phase 1 figured out, basic principles, and so we did something in the lab, and then she thought that was great, and one day we were sitting at waiting for her piano lesson, and she said, "Well, you look sad. What's going on?" And she's 4.5, right? So I said, "Well, Lila passed away today, and I just talked to her dad, and she passed away." And so then Addie, sort of being, kids, they say the darndest thing. She said, "Well, Daddy, every night when I go to sleep, you kiss me on the head, and then you go back to the lab. You work so hard at this, and you spend so much time at the lab, but is there anything you've ever done in your lab ever that's ever saved anyone's life ever?" And I had to say, even though I had an endowed chair, had all these NIH grants and these high-impact papers, I just had to sort of answer a 4.5-year-old with a yes or a no, and the answer was no. And nothing ever got into a clinical trial. And so it took some planning. It took some courage, talking with Jonathan, trying to figure out what it is that we would do. But if we could actually get basic science discoveries to the start of clinical trials for kids with cancer, then truly we would have something honest to say that we'd be proud of to our own kids. And given that, we've been in full operation for a year and maybe 27 days. And in that space, we've taken two papers on 2 drugs that are getting incorporated into 5 clinical trial concepts, of which 2 of the clinical trials should be opening here in a matter of weeks. So, we're doing it. We're finally doing it, but it took a little bit of editorial comments from a 4.5-year-old.
I think it's fantastic. I love that you told that story, because I was inspired by the Lila Foundation, by their passion for getting those statistics. I mean, the 80%, DIPG of deaths is branded in my brain and was one of the main motivators. And for what I do as an advocate, which is just basically whatever I can, and that means a lot to me, that it was because of her passing, and then your daughter said that. That's very powerful. And it just shows the kind of person that you are, that you do this work, and you're an amazing scientist, because you genuinely care about the children, which is really what, the Hippocratic Oath is all about, isn't it?
Yeah, I suppose, right? Do good and no harm. In doing so, that's the truth. And the kids deserve, the families deserve, that there should be real hope. There's never a guarantee on anything, but you don't. The times that the word breakthrough shows up in the newspapers and on TV, there's always that question of, well, is it, and is it available now? And it just seems fair and honest that if there is a breakthrough, it should be made available, and that's what Jonathan and I are dedicated to. It's what our whole team is dedicated to.
Absolutely. You're listening to Childhood Cancer Talk Radio, where kids come first for the cure. I'm Janet Demeter, your host, and we'll be back in a few minutes to hear more from Jonathan Agin, a founder and development liaison for Children's Cancer Therapy Development Institute, and his co-founder, Dr. Charles Keller, scientific director, who has authored over 80 scientific publications and is a recognized expert in the biology of childhood sarcoma and the preclinical investigation of childhood cancers. Childhood Cancer Talk Radio is powered by Jack's Angels Foundation.
Back with more on Childhood Cancer Talk Radio, where kids come first for the cure.
Welcome to Geraldine Tegelov Live, the show that shares with you the secrets of redefining, reinventing, and rebuilding your life. Having pulled herself from the rubble of financial ruin and having gone on to create a highly successful career, Geraldine has become an expert in the art of transformation. She believes that it doesn't matter where you are right now, how overwhelmed you feel, or how impossible the task of turning your life around may seem. You can do it. Stay tuned as metaphysician, international best-selling author, and intuitive Geraldine Tegelov gives you the inner understanding and the outer practical how-to to create your amazing life. Gain a fresh perspective on how to redefine, reinvent, and rebuild your life. Join Geraldine Tegelov live every Tuesday evening at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, right here on the TogiNet Radio Network.
Have you heard? The pages of American Patchwork and Quilting magazine come to life on our new weekly online radio show, American Patchwork and Quilting. Join Pat Sloan, our blogging and quilt designer host, as she talks about the latest trends, ideas, and inspirations. Her guests include quilt pattern designers, authors, quilt shop owners, and our editors, all quilters just like you. Call in with your questions. Get quilting tips from industry experts. Learn about free patterns. Hear behind-the-scenes stories from our magazines, American Patchwork and Quilting, Quilt Sampler, and Quilts and More. Get the scoop on free stuff and find out more about the best independent quilt shops in North America. To listen to a live show, tune in Monday at 4 p.m. Eastern. Just log on to allpeoplequilt.com/radio. To hear past shows, go to iTunes and search for American Patchwork and Quilting Radio. We hope you'll join us because we know that quilting changes everything.
Welcome back to more great conversation on Childhood Cancer Talk Radio, because every child's life deserves hope. Here's Janet.
Welcome back to Childhood Cancer Talk Radio on TogiNet.com. I'm Janet Demeter, your host, and today we're talking about Children's Cancer Therapy Development Institute, which is dedicated to making every childhood cancer survivable, regardless of the diagnosis. It's a nonprofit biotech company formed with the aim of bridging the preclinical gap between basic research and the initiation of clinical trials for children. And CC-TDI can be found on the web at cc-TDI.org. We've been talking with Jonathan Agin, advocate for children and co-founder of the Institute, and also Charles Keller, scientific director. And both gentlemen have expressed their inspiration from children. Jonathan from his daughter, Alexis, who passed away of DIPG. And then Charles Keller, daughter, posed him one of those 4-year-old questions that you just have to answer, and it made him rethink his life, I think, it sounds like, or what he was doing. Amazing. And you know what's funny, too, is that the little girl who had inspired your daughter to ask you that question, whether or not your work was actually helping these kids on a clinical level, the other little girl had died of DIPG also for something that's supposedly so rare. I mean, Gabriella Miller of the Kids First Act died of DIPG. My son did. There's so many with brain tumors. I find that DIPG is a much bigger number than it's made out to be when you get the diagnosis, of course.
Oh, that's for absolutely certain. And the work that you do to bring awareness to these issues is so crucial. You know, all childhood cancers are rare, and I think, you know, that's sort of the fundamental issue. There's the beautiful work being done by the Creating Hope Act and Nancy Goodwin, which I think can change a lot of that, create new motivations. And that's I think that's part of what we envision CC-TDI as a nonprofit biotech being able to do. But I'd say that one of the most important things that we ever do is bring families into our laboratory. And so in our laboratory, it's decorated with pictures of families we know. Many children are with us in this world, many are not, but the families allow us to share their stories. The benches have a picture of each child to which we honor, and then we have the Nana Course every year, where we bring in roughly 15 to 20 families to talk about the process of research, the process of going from discovery to a clinical trial, giving coursework, giving lectures, giving hands-on experience in the lab, and an assignment to write a roadmap for a particular childhood cancer, and then publish that in the peer-reviewed literature. So it happens to be that, you know, part of the reason I know the Nasuli family so well for the Lila Nasuli Foundation is that Simone came shortly after Lila passed away. She came from London to attend the 1-week course, and it was in our lab, and her roadmap, co-published with other parents, appeared as a peer-reviewed article in the flagship journal of the American Society of Pediatric Hematology Oncology, called the Pediatric Blood and Cancer Journal. So there is something very tangible of bringing families in, and of course now we're in our new space. We're in a 70-year-old paint factory that Nike remodeled as an off-site creative space with a full-on DJ booth, and it's not functioning now, but a bar.
Little did they know, it's a very creative space.
It's a really creative space. So this will be the site for the Nana Course this coming year, which promises to be a lot of fun, and it really fuels us for the year. It lets our trainees know what it is they're working towards.
Well, I'm an instant fan because I'm not, my forte has never been, I've never came from money. I'm not a great, people don't want to give me money. I'm not a great fundraiser, but I've always been looking for something where I can put my little bit and know exactly what it's doing and have a direct communication and not be considered less than because I can't give $1 million. I'd like to make maybe 10,000. That would be a brilliant hope for a year, for me.
That would be huge.
But, it's like you're the answer to a prayer for me.
Oh, I'm sorry, Janet.
No, go ahead.
It's, for me, connecting with the families and being able to provide hope on the level of other families who have gone through this, or the next set of parents that's sitting in a room today and getting this diagnosis, or getting any diagnosis of childhood cancer, that to me is really such a huge component of what CC-TDI is. It is a attempt to be nimble. It's an attempt to try and break free from the constraints that have discouraged research from translating from the lab to the clinic. And it's also a place, as Charles said, where we encourage families to tell their children's stories and to participate in various ways and become invested in the process of moving the research from the lab into the clinic. And so it's having people like yourself and all the other individuals that we interact with from the community involved on any level is just, it's huge. It's a pleasure for me, and it's just making a huge difference.
Yeah, it's definitely the right partnerships to have.
Would you tell me a little bit, and I think it was Charles who had mentioned something about this in the literature of CC-TDI, that there was a comment about 2014 data concerning a 40% cut in the preclinical testing program with the NCI, and that there were academic colleagues who were leaders in pediatric oncology and whatever their academic post, that they were kind of decided in their unproclaimed consensus that it was too tedious and narrow scoped, that was the reason for doing that huge cut. How are these judgment calls made?
Well, so I don't want to throw anybody under the bus.
No, we don't want to do that.
So there's National Cancer Institute has an office called the Clinical Trials Evaluation Program, and there's a pediatric oncologist there named Malcolm Smith, who's probably the most ardent advocate of children ever, and so he pioneered funding for a preclinical testing program so that when companies deposited their drugs at NCI to give this to the cooperative groups, that he could send these out to this NCI-funded group of investigators, of which I was one. I was a paid consultant for that, to test the drugs in mouse models of childhood cancer, and basically $15+ million were scheduled to be spent, and nothing was found to work short of the things that were two things that were sort of obvious and maybe didn't need $15 million to figure out. So it became sort of one of the quick things to sort of, well, if a sequester is happening, it was the quickest thing to be taken to the chopping block. I don't think it was because of the priorities of the federal government. I don't think anyone would say that. It's just the way that it was done with the models that were used. They were dated models, kind of tens of years, decades of years older than a lot of the ones that are currently being generated. So there's a new version of that called the Pediatric Preclinical Testing Consortium, where the power has been shifted outside of the NCI CTEP office, and we'll see how well they do. I hope they do really well with lots of new updated models.
Well, I appreciate that very much, because in the childhood cancer advocacy community, for those of us who are more stationed around their home park, wherever they live, rather than going to Washington and trying to connect on a national level so much, a lot of them have this bad feeling about the NCI because of the 4% and all that. And I've been trying to find a way to and I talked with a press agent, NCI, over there, because I'm interested in having someone from their advocacy community or outreach people talk with us, because the one time I had an hour conversation with their advocacy person, I loved it. It was great. I learned so much, and it just made me so much more grateful and respectful of the institution, and that we need it. And oh my gosh, those are some of our best scientists. And, because it's easy to just kind of get down on something just because one thing is broken and you don't really know quite where it is and what to do about it. So you can't throw I don't like that saying baby with the bathwater. I hate that. But,
Right.
I'd like to help facilitate more of a conversation between, basically that government agency, and because it's run by people and people like you and me and other people at home who don't have the connections.
So, in my early days of childhood advocacy, I was an ardent 4% fighter, and I wrote a lot about it. And I think that's really how a lot of people got to know me. And this is when Dr. Varmus was still head of the NCI, and I wrote a piece asking to sit down and have a cup of coffee with him. And then at the first White House briefing that was held in 2014, I saw him in an alcove and walked up to him and extended my hand. And he knew my name right off the bat from the article. And it led to a meeting with myself and Greg Awney, who's a oncologist down in Texas, and himself childhood cancer survivor, who is now connected into NCI and the Advocacy Council, and Danielle Leach from St. Baldrick's, and a number of other folks were around the table, including Dr. Lowy. And
Hold that thought.
Sure.
I love the story. I'm so glad you're doing it. Let's talk about it after the break. You're listening to Childhood Cancer Talk Radio and TogiNet.com, where kids come first for the cure.
Stay tuned. Janet will be right back with more on Childhood Cancer Talk Radio, where kids come first for the cure.
Do you ever wonder if you're the only woman who runs errands in her yoga pants so it will look like she went to the gym? Or how about the only mom who feeds her kids raw cookie dough? Or are you the only one who cooks her family cold cereal for dinner? Do you need more laughter and less loudness? More self-love and less self-loathing? More joy and less judgment? You're not alone. Come to the living room, a place where we get comfy, candid, and confident together. Come seeking sanctuary and leave feeling renewed. We're saving a seat for you. Give yourself some living room today.
In today's business world, a helping hand or idea that doesn't come with an invoice is a treasured find. And if that happens to you, then you need to pay it forward to keep other entrepreneurs from making mistakes or getting a raw deal. It's called Paying It Forward with Josephine Gerasi, Wednesday mornings at 10, 9 a.m. Central. Josephine is going to have the guests describe their accomplishments, the lessons they've learned, both good and bad, and then sharing those pieces of knowledge as we create a movement of paying it forward. For more information about Josephine, her business, and background, you can go to mymomknowsbest.com. Josephine Gerasi has always been a problem solver. She saw this need and has turned it into a movement. It's Paying It Forward with tips, tools, and advice and hard lessons learned. These pieces of knowledge can make a huge difference for you, your business, and others. So join us for Paying It Forward with Josephine Gerasi, Wednesday mornings at 10 a.m., 9 a.m. Central on TogiNet.com.
welcome back to more great conversation on Childhood Cancer Talk Radio, because every child's life deserves hope. Here's Janet.
You're listening to Childhood Cancer Talk Radio on TogiNet.com, and I hope you enjoyed the messages from our awesome sponsors on TogiNet, because we would not have the show if it weren't for them. We were having a great conversation right before the break. We're discussing really a key issue in the whole childhood cancer awareness advocacy movement, the anger around the 4% number with the NCI, and we're talking about the NCI and how they're just people like us, and you know, when I'm sure when they get bombarded with a lot of hate mail, it doesn't make working the problem any easier, does it?
No, it makes them retreat. And, you know, I have pulled back from that argument a lot, because in the meetings that I've been in and in the conversations that I've had, it's clear that they're trying to do the best that they can with the resources that they have. Would I love to see more of a straight allocation for childhood cancer research from the NCI? Yeah, absolutely. That goes without saying. But in order to be, this is my opinion only, in order to be effective in terms of trying to bring some of these drugs into the preclinical level and do the validation and the discovery so that we can initiate effective and de-risked and sensible clinical trials, everybody's got to sit at the same table. And the simple fact of the matter is that the barriers between the understanding of genetic mutations from adult cancers to childhood cancers, they are falling, and the genetic drivers from tumor to tumor, whether it's a childhood cancer to an adult cancer, there are crossover indications. So it doesn't behoove us to separate ourselves and fight that fight. It lends itself to everybody trying to work at the same issue, or this part of the issue, in terms of trying to get at the problem. And so, you know, we all have to coexist in this sandbox. So.
Right. Well, I think that's one of the reasons why I like the whole concept with what you've created with Children's Cancer Therapy Development Institute. And I'm going to say that again, Children's Cancer Therapy Development Institute at cc-tdi.org. Because, you know, here's a situation. We desperately need more for our children. You've identified, you know, the problem with the preclinical gap, which, you know, only a scientist like Charles working in the places that he does would be able to so perfectly, you know, kind of get, okay, here's a problem. What are we going to do about it? And you've created this nonprofit biotech company that's formed basically with the goal of bridging that gap so that you can get drugs from research to the kids, because it seems to be a complete disconnect there. I'm assuming within the NCI and the government as well. So here we are in the private sector, really taking charge and just doing what we can. And in fact, you're setting an example. That's why I was saying I really hope that this is a trend that smart people pick up on, because this is a solution. It's a solution. It brings people to the table together.
Well, you're so kind, Janet. But you know, it's a lot of fun, actually. You know, if you look at the whole situation as glass half full, and you have colleagues in the pharmaceutical companies, they'll say, you know, we have kids too. We really want this to work. We want our drug to be available. For us to go to our higher ups and be your champion, we just need you to de-risk this for us. Show us the discovery, show us the preclinical data, and then hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of drug will be made available to the cooperative groups who themselves are hungry to try new drugs that are scientifically justified. So, you know, if we get across that gap, then we have the pharmaceutical companies on our side, the cooperative groups on our side. We even have the NCI CTEP regulatory office on our side. It's a complete win-win.
It's excellent. I have to just plug for a second some of these foundations that have, like Lila Suli and the Cure Starts Now and the DIPG Collaborative. Without these groups, we wouldn't. I mean, isn't a lot of the funding coming just from these parent foundations?
Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, what would we do without them? I mean, seriously, it looks like over the past 4 years, there's just been this huge growth.
Well, truly. And if I can just mention one tiny little thing, that it's a technical aspect that is probably important when people think about donating money. So the reason that the preclinical gap needs to be bridged is that basically the federal government doesn't fund things that are translational, things like, is that the right dose? Does that drug work on, instead of 2 out of 3 kids' tumors, how about, 10 out of 13? So if the federal government doesn't fund it, then foundations generally do. Foundations, their money doesn't come with the indirect overhead costs that the federal government's money comes with. So if someone got $1 million from NIH, from the National Cancer Institute, there'd be another $500,000 on top of that the federal government would give to the university, for a total award of $1.5 million. $1 million is just to do the research. When you have that kind of incentive, then universities say, of course, study anything you want that NCI will pay for, that any group that pays overhead costs will pay for.
Wow.
But when foundations don't provide indirect costs to keep the lights on, to pay the plumbers, and so forth, then it disincentivizes any sort of studies in the preclinical gap.
Wow. Well, I really appreciate your explaining that to me, because these are things that, I wouldn't know. We often out here make decisions or judgments on things we don't really know the intricacies of how the system works. And so you're explaining that from a scientist's perspective is very, very helpful.
Well, thanks. Right. So, yeah, but everyone wants all of their money to go to research. And I would too. But by not having the overhead costs, the indirect costs, it just changes the flavor of the preference of different people with the expertise that you want studying those children's cancers. Basically, their universities just won't encourage it. So.
Well, I think that's what's sad also, too, is I hear more often than not graduate students abandoning their passion, the course that they want to take, because there's no money in it.
Yeah.
That makes me really sad. It's like, oh. So, yes, I want to stress that, too, because even when you're giving to a foundation, there's always this desire. I know on my part with Jack's Angels Foundation, I want to be able to give every cent to research. And I mean, I can't. I mean, we have expenses. We have things, it costs money just to operate, and
it's a business.
I have to eat. It is a business. And,
absolutely.
And to run a charity responsibly, you have to have that balance of, okay, let's be really clear about this, and very transparent. But it's like some people just have it in their head that I think it's because there have been so many scandals lately of big charities, taking lots of money where they shouldn't. And it kind of ruins it for the rest of us, especially for a little guy.
Well, you use the word transparent, Janet, and that's something that when the idea and the concept for CC-TDI at least was put forward to me when Charles and I were discussing it, the word transparent just was something that we continued to hang our hats on, and it is something that we strive hard to do is be as transparent as possible with everything that we're doing. And that's one of the reasons why it's great to invite foundations in and invite parents in to see what we're doing and be as open as we possibly can on what we're doing and how we're doing it.
I think it's great. You've got my vote, and I let anybody out there know that if you've ever wanted to give to research and feel really comfortable with who you're giving it to, check out cc-tdi.org online. It's a beautiful website, very well explained. There's a lot of stories on there as well. It's the real deal. I'm so grateful. I mean, Jonathan, the only reason I knew about it is because you posted, on Facebook something about it that just blew me away. I was like, oh my gosh, I have to learn about this. This is what I've been looking for.
I think it was when I was out at the lab a couple weeks ago.
Yes.
I've only gotten the good fortune of getting out there from D.C. to Portland twice, but every time I go to the lab, I think about changing my career and becoming a researcher. I just get so energized. It's incredible. So.
Well, that's not an unusual story. We've actually there'll be a parent who's coming from Montana in a few months. He's just coming for a quote sabbatical. So someone who's a home designer who's been on the HG channel for dream bathrooms. He's especially good at bathroom tile and remodeling, and he's coming out for 6 weeks to study Wilms tumor, anaplastic Wilms tumor. Who would have imagined, right?
Well, from bath tiles to organic compounds and molecules.
It's an energizing place. It really is. You can't help but be excited when you're there.
I can't thank both of you enough for coming on the show. I wish I had a lot more time. But I just wanted to say that we've been speaking with Dr. Charles Keller, Scientific Director of Children's Cancer Therapy Development Institute, and co-founder Jonathan Agin, General Counsel and Development Liaison, both champions for kids with cancer today. For more information about CC-TDI, visit www.cc-tdi.org. I'm Janet Demeter. This radio show is called Childhood Cancer Talk Radio Show, and it's powered by Jack's Angels Foundation. For more information about Jack's Angels and our advocacy work, go to jacksangels.org. There's an advocacy page, and take a look at our news and our blog. Please check out the latest pieces of legislation that really need support for our kids with cancer. Nothing is going to change with our representatives in government if you don't tell them what you want. Okay? Go to jacksangels.org. There are links to sites where you can find out how to contact your representatives if you don't know, but let them know how you feel. Let them know that those pieces of legislation are important to you. The STAR Act and HRES 586, which supports pediatric brain tumor awareness and support for all childhood cancers. Thank you so much for tuning in today. Thank you, gentlemen, for being here. You're awesome. I'm forever your fan.
Thanks, Janet.
Thanks for what you do, Janet.
Appreciate it.
From today's show. For more about Janet Demeter and her mission, visit jacksangels.org. As founder and president, Janet strives to assure that children with cancer and their parents have a voice, raising awareness for the need to prioritize our children in the quest for